Good afternoon, and thank you for joining Little Steps Asia Live. I'm Glenda with Little Steps, and today we are live in Hong Kong. Little Steps Asia is your leading digital media for families right across Asia. As we enter the fifth wave, which started back just a short few weeks ago, life in the city has definitely changed for those of us living here in Hong Kong. And a lot of people right now are working from home. We have the kids back to online schooling. With the prospect of community-wide testing, it's caused a lot of stress for a lot of families. And now that COVID is directly in the community, the threat of catching it seems more real. It's a lot to deal with for anyone, but there are things that we can do to help us get through this. And this is why we've invited Sonia Samtani. She's a clinical hypnotherapist, a life coach, and a trainer. And she's here to join us and share her thoughts on conscious parenting, coping with stress, and setting boundaries within the family. But before we get started, just a few quick reminders. We do go live every other week. You can see what's coming up on our Facebook page on the events section. Click on the ones that you're interested in, and we'll be sure to send you a reminder so that you don't miss out on the topics that interest you. As well, we have a weekly newsletter, and we are in 6 different cities right across Asia, from here in Hong Kong to Singapore, all the way to Kuala Lumpur and beyond. You can get connected with that in the description down below. And we are live today, which means we do love to interact with you. So please share your thoughts, ask your questions in the comments section, and we'll be sure to have them answered before the hour is up. Back to our topic for today. As we navigate the 5th wave of the pandemic, all of us are struggling to some extent. We have our kids at home and we're unable to offer them after-school activities. And our social lives are limited to one-on-one walks. This can leave us with dealing with some very uncomfortable emotions, and we tend to take it out on those that are closest to us. While things are difficult right now, there are things that we can be doing to get through this time. Things like considering conscious parenting, learning some strategies to cope with stress, and setting boundaries within the family. I would like to introduce you our guest today. We have Sonia Samtani. She is a clinical hypnotherapist, life coach, and trainer, and founder and CEO of Hong Kong's wellness facility, All About You. Thank you, Sonia, so much for joining us here today.
Such a pleasure to be here with you, Glenda.
Amazing, thank you. We have 3 main topic areas that we will be going through. The first one being conscious parenting, what that is and how you can apply it. The next one will be managing the stress of lockdown. And finally, we'll go through how to set boundaries.
Very relevant.
So Sonia, super relevant. I know there's going to be a lot of families watching right now that are very eager to hear what you have to say in regards to these topics. So if you could maybe start off by explaining, please, Sonia, what conscious parenting is and how we can practice that as parents.
Absolutely. So let's define the term. So conscious parenting. What does conscious mean? Conscious means to be aware. So conscious parenting is being aware of why you do what you do, being aware of why you are speaking in a certain way, what's happening with you at that time, what's happening with your child. And through a lot of studying on children, inner children, etc., we know that children basically need 3 things. It is nurturing, safety, and guidance. Nurturing, a lot of parents are good at. They love their children. Safety, we have, well, as much as we can, a safe environment. It's the guidance usually where we need a little bit more guidance. So what does that mean? It means getting your child to understand choice and consequence instead of right, wrong, good and bad, and instilling judgment and shame. And it's also guidance to work with the laws of earth instead of against them. Work with duality, work with the fact that we're going to have success and failure. We're going to be excluded and rejected, and we're going to be included. We're going to face the dark and the light parts of life. We're going to face both. So if we give that kind of guidance to children, it really helps them understand what choices they do have that's under their control. It helps them to understand how to deal when they do face failure, mistakes, falling, how to pick themselves up. And it makes them more autonomous and ready to face the real world.
Wonderful. Yes, giving children choices and making them feel in control as well, right? Very important things.
Yes, absolutely.
What would you say conscious parenting says about, sorry, we do have a little bit of a time delay. What does conscious parenting say about discipline?
Yes, so discipline, it's not a wrong or a bad thing. It's just being able to do it without judgment and shame. So the traditional way to discipline is to give your child a bunch of rules. This is what makes you a good girl, good boy, good whatever. This is what makes you bad and wrong. And if you do good, then you're lovable. And if you do bad, then you're not lovable, which actually creates a lot of shame and a false sense of self where we feel as if I'm not okay, I'm not enough. So, when we are disciplining consciously, it's about understanding how to differentiate between behavior and who your child is. So, if your child knocks over something, it doesn't mean that they're clumsy, they're stupid, they don't know any better. It's about something that happened, a behavior. And it's about understanding what was going on for your child at that time. Maybe they were not focused on knocking over the bottle that was on the floor. Maybe they were focused on something else. If they do learn that, what can we now do to help them to see a more peripheral view, to actually focus on this? And if we are educating them with that choice and consequence, with that understanding, then we can show them this without adding blame, shame, or judgment into the equation. I hope that makes sense.
I really love what you're saying there. That makes a lot of sense. I think for a lot of parents, especially with the external stresses that we have going on right now, a lot of us can jump to being angry quite quickly. So, trying to find that patience for our children, how can we stop ourselves from getting angry with them?
Well, first off, that sentence itself, stop ourselves, it already suggests that it's there. Right? So it has to be there in order to stop. And I would say accept that anger is a primary emotion. It is going to be there till the day we die. And let's not kid ourselves to be perfect or to be the most patient, non-angry mother or father that one can be. Other than that, let's understand and accept that we will have anger. And instead of stopping it, understand how we can channel it differently. And so when we are angry, what can we do? Instead of stopping it, because stopping it is going to push the anger deep inside us, then we are going to have some sort of coping mechanism where we suppress it or we blow up at somebody else. None of it is going to be healthy for anyone. So if we do feel angry, anger is a thwarted expectation. So I expected A, I got B. I expected my child to do this, they did something else. I expected the government to do this, it did something else, right? So we get angry about it. The underlying lesson actually is acceptance, because I'm not accepting the way it is. I need it to be different. I need it to be the way that I expected it to be. So the way it is not okay. All right, so we understand that the underlying lesson is acceptance. But if you're angry at that moment, you're not going to accept. So if you tell an angry person to accept, it doesn't really help. Then they become angry, then they become guilty on top of that, because now I'm angry, but I'm not accepting. So now I'm wrong about that too. So I'm guilty. So what I would say is accept that you're angry. Allow yourself to release that emotion of anger, maybe in a safe space. If you know how to use breath work, it's a beautiful way. You can use breathing techniques. You can use pranayamas to allow yourself to release the anger that's already there. If you do exercise, you can do that to release the anger that's already there. I know it's okay to feel it. Once that anger has moved, then we can actually focus on the lesson of acceptance. What is it that I'm judging that I haven't accepted yet? What is it that I really want to be different, but it's not under my control? My child is not under my control. The government is not under my control. So what can I accept? That would be step 2.
Okay, so really sitting in that moment, trying to break down what it is that's causing this hot feeling of anger.
Yeah, understand that and accept that you're feeling what you're feeling. And once we understand and accept it and we learn that lesson, we are probably going to prevent ourselves from being angry about the same thing again. because we've now understood what is under my control and what's not under my control, rather than saying that it's wrong to feel angry.
Wonderful. Really great advice. What would you say are the challenges of conscious parenting during the pandemic, and how can we address these specific issues?
I would say one of the biggest challenges is that we have no clue what to do. There's no reference point. So our parents and our grandparents haven't gone through this. We don't know what to do in this scenario. So usually we land upon an education or advice from other people, but here it's the first time we're going through this. So one of the biggest challenges is not knowing what to do. Then we've got additional things like being in an environment where you are not socializing so much, or it looks very different, and then there's issues of screen time, etc. So firstly, know that this is something that we are all going through, and it is natural to have issues around control, because what I don't know, I can't control. And usually what I can't control naturally scares me. And so people do get anxious and scared about what they can't control. So I would say to focus on what parts of this life right now is fully under your control and what parts are not. So it's not under our control what the restrictions are. It's not under our control what's going to happen with COVID. It's not under our control about when this outbreak is going to end. What is under our control is our routine, our schedule, where we choose to be, even if we choose to be in Hong Kong or not, our lifestyle, the way that we interact with our children. All of these things are under our control. One of the pitfalls is keep focusing on what's not under your control and saying that this is wrong, this is bad. So that's my first advice, to focus on what we can do about it. And then making a choice from there. And it actually doesn't matter which choice you make. Like, many people are making the choice to stay in Hong Kong, and many are making the choice to leave. Now, which one you do, there's no better or worse. It's just being at peace with the choices that you make, being at peace with why you are doing what you're doing. That would be one thing. And then one more thing I'd like to mention around the pandemic is this whole notion of screen time that I've heard with so many parents. And there's like a battle of how much screen time is there going to be? And there's so much screen time now, and with the school happening and everything else. Sometimes I've noticed that this is more an issue for parents than the children. And the children may be more okay with it, at least the older ones, than the parents. And there's a lot of rules around it and meaning making. And it's something perhaps for us to embrace and learn how to use rather than reject. So it's not the enemy, and perhaps it's not our job to reduce it as much as possible, and instead to see how can we work with it? How can we take this as an opportunity to guide, befriend, and mentor children instead of being the technology police?
That's a really, really good point. And I think a lot of us as parents have put up a lot of roadblocks to screen time. And unfortunately, we keep getting pushed into more of it, right? So like you said, focusing on how it can be of benefit and how you can work with it, instead of having this complete wall that's put up that it's bad.
Yeah. And it's a mental association with it. So we feel as if we're like on the opposite side of technology and we're battling against it. And mentally, if you can see yourself on the same side and see the benefits and how we can use it and how it can add value, and of course you can have values and boundaries around what you and your child and your family wants, and know how to use that technology rather than put more restrictions against it, because we already have so many restrictions now. We're restricted on where to go, how many people can sit in a restaurant, so we don't need that much more.
Very good point. I'm going to lead us into our second topic area, managing the stress of a lockdown, which I know is weighing heavy on everyone's mind currently. How does the stress of worrying about catching COVID, upcoming mass testing, quarantines, and keeping our children safe, how does that actually affect us?
Yeah, I'm going to say something that happens when we're anxious. So when we're anxious, we normally imagine the worst case scenario. We freeze there and then we act as if it's happening right now, and it brings up all of the symptoms of stress. So the worst that could happen is, okay, I could catch it. And then you freeze at that thought of catching the virus and the worst that could happen in that respect and the worst that could happen to your family. And of course, that's going to bring up stress. And then to cope, a lot of people say, okay, well, I just say to myself, or I tell my friends, don't think about it. Don't think about it. You're thinking about worst case scenario, don't think. And my take is it's actually too late to say don't think, because you've already thought. And if you've already thought, then you might as well finish the thought. And that's a great way to reduce stress and anxiety. So if you are thinking about the worst, okay, I've caught the virus and we are apart for a while. Let's go to a week later, a month later, 2 months later, and go to a moment of calm. Maybe even a couple of months later, there might be a moment of calm. Okay. And if we're logical, we may find it. When we go to that, then your consciousness is not frozen in worst case scenario. You can actually move through it. Once you go to that moment of calm, then we can switch our thoughts and focus on what we do want and focus on how we would like to create the next few months in our lives without the other thought coming back and knocking on the door. Because if we avoid something, it tends to come back. But if we go with it and go with it to the end, we don't need it to keep knocking on our door and say, well, what if worst case scenario? Because we've already understood that I can deal with it. It may not be pretty, it may not be what I want, yet I have the tools to deal with it. And faith is basically the opposite of fear. Faith is what's needed in order to move from fear.
So instead of pushing those anxious thoughts aside, deal with them, go all the way through it to the very end, to the calmness, to the positive side on the other end of it. And if you hold yourself in the anxious spot, you'll never move forward. So it's important to go through it,
yes,
all the way through.
That's what I would say. And you can do that as a visualization. You can do it mentally. You can do it in conversation with somebody. I've done this many times with people, and it's been very helpful to not be stuck in that moment of the worst case scenario.
Such great advice, because I think it's a natural instinct for many of us to just push it aside.
Yes.
What daily rituals can we incorporate into our lives to help us deal with uncomfortable emotions like anger and self-doubt?
The daily rituals would be to have some time for catharsis. Now, catharsis means a physical release of emotional toxicity. And in order to even do that, let's first accept that we will be facing emotions our whole life. Of course, the pandemic may have aggravated, exacerbated it. Yet, even without the pandemic, we are going to continuously face 4 emotions: happiness, anger, fear, and sadness. So those are kind of what we call 4 primary emotions. Now, we have only looked at one of them as positive, happiness. So we think that anger, fear, and sadness is negative. And then we have this notion that we shouldn't feel it and we should push it down or cope with it. So again, my take would be understand that no matter where we are in life, we're going to feel these 4 emotions. It's okay to feel it. And the goal is to process emotions. It's not to suppress or to cope and do something else or distract. It's to process. And what we can do to process is at night before sleeping, since you asked about ritual, it's a good idea to review your day. So you can review everything that happened in the day and all the feelings that you had towards the occurrences in the day, and think about the feelings perhaps that you still have that are not processed. So for example, I'm still feeling angry with my child, or I'm still feeling sad that I lost something. And use your breath to just process that emotion. So feel the anger in the body and breathe. Feel the sadness maybe in your heart and breathe through it. When you do that, you'll probably find that there is some movement that's happening. That is processing emotions. And that is a great ritual to do. I do it myself. I've been doing this for years. And it's a great way to eliminate those emotions from impacting the day, the next day, the day after, because you've actually processed them before sleeping.
Great. I have a question for you, Sonia, from Sarah, and she would like to know if we're feeling a roller coaster of emotions and don't feel like ourselves. I guess really what she's asking is how do we cope with that?
Right. Firstly, identifying it by looking at what I'm feeling. So, what words can I put with that? And if I don't even know, then let's look at what I do know. So, what I do know is that I'm feeling a sensation in my heart. What I do know is that I'm feeling heavy in my body. What I do know is that I'm feeling overwhelmed. We don't have to figure it all out in the moment. Go with what you do know. And once you do that, you can then once again use breath work. You can admit and acknowledge this is how I'm feeling. And the moment you acknowledge it, you're not resisting it, you're not pushing it away, you're not judging it and saying this is wrong, I shouldn't feel it. You're actually naming it and embracing it. That is step one. Once you do that, then the processing will begin to start.
Great.
So that's what I would say. Simple tool.
I think there are a lot of us out there that are feeling like we're trapped inside our four walls within our home. How do you deal with those specific feelings?
Yeah, so once again, I would probably say look at what's under your control and what's not. So, what is not under our control, again, is what's happening out there. The spread of the virus doesn't know boundaries, right? And what's happening with our restrictions is not under our control. What is? And people have different familial circumstances. So, if it is under your control to go downstairs and take a walk, do that. That's something you can do. Changing the way that we view it is kind of changing the primary question in your mind from when is this going to change, or why is the person acting the way that it is, why is the virus spreading so much, why is Hong Kong facing this after every other country. Now all of those questions don't have an answer that we can control, and most of those questions will lead you to feeling helpless because you can't control it. So, how about asking yourself, what do I need right now that is under my control? And what can I do about it? And that will give you choice, and choice gives you freedom, because you're going to feel trapped when you feel like I have no freedom and I have no choice. Focusing on what you can't control will make you feel trapped. Focusing on what you can will make you feel free. So, it's a shift of focus.
Free and empowered, I would say, the power to make a choice, right?
Absolutely.
And finding those choices. How can we help children cope with the lockdown? I'm sure a lot of parents are asking themselves that right now.
Yeah, I would say just listen to them, right? Because there's a tendency for so many of us to project. And we feel like as children during our time, we wanted to go and play outside, and our child must be feeling so stuck. Now, we don't know if your child really is. We don't know if this is your projection. And many times it could be your projection because your child has probably learned technology from the age of 2, and your child knows how to socialize and get so many needs met using modern day stuff more than we do. So, to help children, I would say is let's get over ourselves and our notions and what we think we needed at the time, to listen and to understand your child and just listen to what they have to say. So, if we're helping our child cope, we first need to understand coping with what? What are they feeling? What is it that they want help to cope with? And by listening, it doesn't mean you have to agree to everything, yet it's just understanding their world. And then maybe asking a question as simple as, what is it that you need right now? What would be most valuable for you? And for older children, of course, they can understand these questions more. For younger children, it's about us shifting our focus. So if the child is 2 or 3 years old, again, shifting our focus to what are they communicating in the way that they do, even if it's nonverbal or it's in babble. What is it that they're showing us that is okay with them, not okay with them, and what do they need?
I think the one thing that has really come through during this pandemic is how adaptable our children are. And I think the statement that you made, that we do often project our own fears, our own issues onto our children, is a very real thing. And to just listen to them and to ask those questions, very, very important to see where they're at and what's upsetting them, if there's something that's upsetting them, right?
Yes, exactly. And I've seen so many cases where the child is actually okay. It's the parent that's feeling, oh, my child's not getting this opportunity or that opportunity. And it's the parent that could actually do something about it.
Right. That makes a lot of sense. What would you say is the best physical activity specifically for stress?
So for emotions like anger, stress, and fear, cardio is best. It's different from sadness, because sadness has a different vibration. So if you're looking at anger and stress, cardio is a great way to release that. And the type of cardio that you do is up to you, because cardio actually gets the heart to beat faster. It gets adrenaline pumping. And the difference between it being an exercise and a release is your intention. So you can go for a run and feel great after the run, or you can think about, what am I most stressed about? What am I most anxious about? Or what am I most angry about? And then run it out. And once you run it out with that intention, that run is actually therapy, because that is what we do in therapy. We get your mind to focus on something specific, to bring up those specific emotional charges, and then to do something physically to release that, to do something that is cathartic. And the good news is cardio can be done anywhere. Okay? It can be done during your quarantine in a room. It can be done outside. It can be done inside. It can be done in so many places. So cardio would be one. And then breath work would be another. If anybody is into yoga, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about, because the whole point of doing cardio as well is for the breath to release the emotions that are there.
Great. Really great tips. I would like to encourage anyone that's watching right now, if you have a question for Sonia, please put it in the comments section and we'll be sure to get to it. I do have another question for you from Jacqueline. How do we support family members who are currently sick, especially if it's our parents? So as a daughter helping our parents. Very good question.
Yeah, beautiful question. And just like children, I would say, ask them what they need. Yeah, talk to them, because truly supporting someone is supporting them, not supporting us to feel good that we're taking care of them. And sometimes we don't know the difference. We have all of these shoulds of, oh, I need to be the dutiful daughter, I need to be the great mom, and I need to do all of these things to take care of the other. Whereas maybe that's not what they're looking for. That's not how they feel cared for. They feel cared for with something else. So when your child needs space, we smother them. When your parent needs quality time, instead we hug them. So if you're doing something that you think you might need, again, we're not listening to them. So with parents as well, listen to what they need. Listen to what makes them feel cared for. Ask them, in what way would they like to feel supported by you? What does that look like? And that conversation itself is really lovely to build rapport in the family, to build closeness in the family.
Oh, sorry, go on.
If
Yes.
I can just add one little caveat, right? When it comes to supporting people that are sick, it is often that some people go into what I call the rescuer role. And the rescuer role is to kind of unconsciously carry them on your shoulders and feel as if I'm 100% responsible for them. And it is possible to love without feeling 100% responsible. So to trust that people ultimately have the tools that they need to handle what comes their way. You can love, you can support, yet we don't have to do it feeling like I'm carrying them or being responsible for them, because then you become as sick as them unconsciously and maybe mentally through all the stress that you're carrying.
Oh, great advice. Really good advice. I have another question for you from Sarah. What's some nonverbal signs of stress in kids?
Okay, there can be so many. So I would say look at two opposite directions, some that are pulling away and some that are becoming even more needy. So it depends on whether your child is going into fight or flight. So if your child is going into flight, then they will be disconnecting. They would be lost. Their concentration perhaps is not going to be there. They won't be able to focus on reading something because their mind is not there. If you ask them a question, maybe they're not even registering what you're saying. So those are some signs of mentally running away. On the other hand, if the child is in fight syndrome, then they are going into becoming extra needy for attention, wanting to talk to you, wanting to cling on to you, wanting to ask you to be there because they don't feel safe. Now, both of them are telltale signs that something's not okay, that they're not feeling in charge. They're either running away from feeling in charge or they're wanting to depend on you. And if you understand that, then it's up to the parent to really be able to talk to know what's behind this. What is driving this behavior? And maybe it's I'm not safe. Maybe it's I don't feel like I belong. Maybe it's I don't know what tools I can have to cope. Maybe it's I don't feel loved at this moment. And if you understand what's behind that, then we can give love, nurturing, reassurance as we do as parents.
I think we're going to go into our third section now about boundaries within the family. How would you define boundaries?
That's a great question and a good place to start. So, boundaries, a good way to think about it, it's that unconscious line that separates you and me. So, we're not the same person. We've got our own individual personality, our individual needs, and there needs to be some place where I finish and you start. So, a nice way to think about it is when you have like two homes and there's a wall between the two homes. So, boundaries are necessary for us to know this is who I am, these are my needs, my values, my personality, this is somebody else. And how can we move towards the same goal, share family time together, have great relationship, and still maintain those boundaries of separation? I hope.
Okay, and can you share some examples of good boundary setting in our home, our work, and our social lives?
Sure. The most simple one to share would be time and space boundaries. So, space boundaries would be physically defining that this is my space, this is my room. And I know Hong Kong homes are small for a lot of people. So, simple things like placing a curtain or a partition has been, monumentally bringing peace to many people. So, I was talking to one of my clients the other day who felt as if the family members kept looking at her and that she didn't have her own space. So having a wall, having a curtain, if you feel as if that the wall is even flimsy, to darken it in some way gives you a boundary of this is my physical space. That's an easy thing to do if the need for some people is to have your space. And then time boundaries. So time boundaries, let's say if you're an entrepreneur and you have many hats that you're wearing. You can be a business person, you can be an artist in the same company, and you've got your family life. So if you have certain times where, okay, between 4 to 6 p.m., I'm available for my HR department to ask me questions. And then from 1 to 3 p.m., I'm available to talk to my technical department. So it's setting time boundaries about when you're available for what and scheduling it. Those are some great sort of tangible tips to start with for physical. And then, of course, there's emotional boundaries too.
Right. Yes. And any examples of those that you can give?
Yes. Now, those were the big ones, the emotional boundaries. Physical ones are still like easy because they're tangible, right? For the emotional boundaries, we need to first understand what our values are. Because what am I putting a boundary for? And everyone's values are different. Some people value personal space more than others. Some people don't like to be asked certain questions like, where are you going? How long will you be gone for? XYZ. Some people have a value of needing more me time, more downtime. So, for emotional boundary setting, it's to understand myself and my needs and to be able to communicate those needs to my family members, the people in my environment, my loved ones, and to have the ability to say no when something doesn't work for you. That is the biggest lesson for boundary setting. So, check, does this align with my personal values? Yes or no? And if it doesn't, can I say no? And one thing that I also like to add around that, when you're checking, right, we're not only checking about our feelings, because feelings come and go. So let's say I'm committed to go to the gym. I'm not going to feel like it every day. So if I listen to my feelings and I say boundary, I don't want to go to the gym because I don't feel like it, that may not be so great for me in the long run. So when we are checking in, check with feelings and goals. So that's actually looking at it from wisdom rather than from emotion. So, does this align to what I want, my goals in life, my values? Does it align to my feelings? I look at both from wisdom. If it's yes, I go ahead and do it. If it's not, I can say no. And in saying no, we need to be able to displease others sometimes and be comfortable with it. And that is a big lesson there.
Right. Being comfortable with that. That's key, right?
Yes, absolutely.
And what happens if we don't set those boundaries?
Then we end up probably losing a part of ourselves. So if we don't set
Mhm.
those boundaries, in some way, you may feel like, I don't have enough time for me. I keep giving and giving. I'm tired. I'm drained. I don't have energy for myself because I've given it all out to others. Again, you could feel
Mhm.
responsible for others more than you need to be because, again, that's not 100% under your control. And people can go two ways with that. One is this, where you feel as if my boundaries are being trampled all over and I have nothing for me. The ultimate feeling for that would then be um, lack of self esteem. I'm not good enough to say no. I don't have anything for me. People are not giving to me because I've not actually said, this is what I need. I've not placed my boundary. And so other people are not considering my needs either. But that's because I haven't considered my own needs. And then other people who have boundary violation in the opposite way can feel as if they have the right to invade your boundaries because you have not placed them, you've not put them up. And so in every drama that you have with somebody, there would be someone that is giving too much and someone that is taking too much, and this becomes a perfect codependent relationship. So that is the impact of lack of boundaries.
Very true, true. How can we teach our kids to set these boundaries?
by From a young age, allowing your child to individuate, which can be hard, I think, for many parents, right? Because your child will go through so many stages, and stage one is they are 100% dependent on you. And if you're not there, that's, you're risking their survival. So the child needs to be picked up, bathed, fed, taken care of. Only then will they survive. And then your child will go through different stages from being dependent to learning how to say no. Yeah, around 2, 3 years old, which can be difficult for so many parents. And now that's where they're starting to individuate. They're starting to learn their boundaries. And then maybe they will become counter dependent, which means that they start saying, no, I don't want this, I don't want that. And they're kind of testing those boundaries. And then finally, the healthiest space to end up is to be interdependent. So for parents to understand that this is such a natural part of growing up, and that is what the child needs to do, would probably be the first step. And secondly, when
Mhm.
the child is around 2, 3 years old, when the favorite word no comes up time and time and time again, and that's when the child is learning their boundaries, it's to actually be being able to listen to the no and understanding you don't have to agree with it. At least to listen to it so the child knows that I'm being heard. And then the child will develop a sense of willpower, a sense of self assertiveness. And that is the foundation of setting boundaries. to be able to assert yourself, because when I spoke up when I was a child, I was heard. My no was heard. My needs were heard. And so now I have that foundation where I can continue to express myself. And perhaps I feel good enough to do that. And I will be heard because I have that assertiveness.
Wonderful. Yes, it's definitely giving them confidence in their own voice and their own opinions about themselves and what they need at a very young age. That's really great. And Sonia, can we set boundaries together as a family? And if so, how?
Yes, absolutely. I think it's a very healthy thing to do, to set boundaries as a family. And it's something that, you could come together like a family meeting, understand that, in a healthy functional family, there is no hierarchy. So there is no higher, lower, this and that. We're all equal. Okay. It's like a democratic meeting where everybody has a voice and everyone's voice is there and valid. We look at different people's values, and then we look at what is common. How can we build family values? What is our family standing for? And then from that, we can develop healthy boundaries, like boundaries of how often or how much time we spend together. In that time that we're spending together, what do we do? What are healthy ways to be together? And in the family, it's also healthy to have time where the whole family comes together. And then there's also independent time for each family member. So for simplicity, let's say mother, father, child. The mother, father have their own time. That's just the two of them. The child has time with each parent that's separate. Then there's family time where three of them come together. And there's also individual time that each of them have for themselves. Those are very healthy boundaries. And knowing how we can actually set the stage for that, what we can do about that. And once you communicate it, to be able to actually have maybe a schedule or a way to implement it that is in agreement with everyone. And then the biggest thing to make this healthy is to be flexible. So once you have something like that set, it's beautiful because at least you know. The risk is if you become rigid about it and say, Sunday is family day, and my child is now invited for a sleepover with her best friend, and she's been dying to do this. But no, Sunday is family day. This is our boundary. This is our value. You can't go, may not be so healthy. Okay, so flexible enough. If something is important to a family member, you assess that, you see what is aligned with your values, and then maybe you tweak it. And it's okay to tweak. Yeah, it's okay to have the boundaries, and of course, be flexible with it too.
Flexibility, lovely. I think you need a lot of that in a family dynamic. It's great. I'd like to encourage everyone that's watching, if you have any questions for Sonia, you can put them in the comment section right now. I have a couple more questions for you. This one's a little bit in a different direction. Everyone right now is getting, it seems almost daily, where we're dealing with, negative news and one negative thing after another. How can we focus on staying positive when things can seem so tough?
Yeah, I might ask, instead of positive, to maybe stay in charge, empowered, and to understand that ups and downs will happen. So we are facing the darker shades of what life has to offer. Acknowledge what you are feeling now. And once you acknowledge what you are feeling, you're not fighting against it. You're not saying, I'm negative, but I should be positive. I'm down, but I should be up, right? You're acknowledging how you're feeling and making it okay. Once you make it okay, then simply, if what you want to do is focus on the positive, ask yourself a specific question that focuses on that. So I acknowledge that I'm feeling sad. I acknowledge I'm feeling angry. I acknowledge I'm feeling trapped. Then that part of you feels hurt. Then you can ask, now, what can I appreciate about my life right now? That's a different focus of a question. What am I grateful for right now? What is working for me right now? And you can't answer that question without being positive. So the answer to that question will be positive because that's the focus of the question. So twofold: acknowledge what you're feeling now, and then ask a different question that focuses on what you'd like to feel.
Okay. And what words of comfort can we offer to our children during these difficult times?
With children, I think their basic needs are to be loved, to feel accepted, to feel belonged, and to feel safe.
Mm-hmm.
Now, different children have different ways of receiving communication. Some children are very literal. So if you say to them, I'm here for you, you are safe, we're going to get through this together, you have all the tools within you, they'll take to that and it's going to be very comfortable. There are certain children that can be extremely analytical and they'll debate with you. Okay. And for those who are analytical, check what they need. And maybe what they need will be more subtle and less direct.
Mm-hmm.
What they need is for you to be there and have that debate with them because you're unconsciously showing them, I'm here. I'm here to talk it over with you. I'm here to be here as we go through the ups and downs together. So check what your child, the way that your child receives communication. In a nutshell, I would say that some are more receptive to the direct communication and some are more to the indirect.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, a little questionnaire on my website if you want to know which one you are.
Okay, good to know.
You can actually do that. But yeah, just let your child know that they have the tools to deal with it, that it is going to move. We're not stuck in this. It's not a never ending thing, even though it might feel like it right now. The only thing that is constant is movement. Change is going to happen and we have tools to deal with it.
Mm-hmm. Very good. We've covered so much in the last 45 minutes here. Is there anything else that you would like to add?
We've covered a lot. And I think because of that context and the amount of things that we've shared, what I'd like to say is if you picked up anything that you think is valuable during this conversation, then see if you can apply any one thing in your life, because it's not so easy to have 10 insights and apply 10 things all together. So if you feel like the primary question is something that you took away, or understanding that I'm not stuck in worst case scenario, I can move through it, or wanting to communicate to my child in terms of what they need rather than me projecting it, or the tips about screen time, there's many, many things that we said. If there's one thing that resonated with you most, and you can take that and make one tweak in your life, then make that decision and follow up with that tweak at least for 21 days, because it takes 21 days to just set the groundwork for shifts and changes. And after 21 days, your mind registers it. Keep it going for another 40 days, okay, for that to become the path of least resistance. And for best results, keep it going for 90 days.
That's great. So I guess just really resetting a habit, right? And to take off a small piece. It doesn't have to be everything, because I'm sure some people have listened to this today and there could be a lot of bells going off with things that they would like to implement, but just taking off a small chunk at a time and working at it.
Yes, absolutely. And every time we hear something like this, maybe what I've shared is not even new. And the reinforcement and the reminders and the refreshers is what we need so much of the time, because we keep functioning on autopilot. Even though we know better, we still don't do it. And so that's why reminders are so powerful.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you so much, Sonia, for being here today.
You're very welcome. It's been such a pleasure. Your questions were great. I had so much fun answering them and going into all of these topics. So thank you.
Wonderful. I think everyone that's watched today will be walking away with something different for their family. So thank you so much. If you would like to get regular wellness advice from Sonia Samtani, you can follow her on her Instagram account at instagram.com/Sonia Samtani. And if you want to book an appointment for training, hypnotherapy, or life coaching, you can visit the All About You Center at allaboutYouCenter.com. Thank you again. And for those of you that are watching, if you would like to see more videos like these, you can subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can follow us on one of our many social media platforms, or better yet, you could sign up for our weekly newsletter. Thank you so much. Here at Little Steps Asia, we are a library of resources for the entire family. Stay tuned for what we have coming up next. Bye for now.
Bye. Bye, everybody. Thank you.